points came up.
Good evening, YouTube. It is Mrs. Dave the Lawyer, aka Jacqueline Leah, coming to you live Monday. I think it's July 6th. I hope everybody had a fantastic July 4th weekend. I'm sorry I wasn't here this weekend. I had planned to stream on the 4th, but we had an internet outage literally all day on the 4th from like, I don't know, late morning all the way to like 9:30 at night. I mean, I really wanted to stream and I wanted to edit some videos and clip them, but honestly, it was kind of a good thing that the internet was down because my kids couldn't go on their meta quests and Roblox and computer games and whatnot. So they had to stay engaged with the family, and we have a really great view of the fireworks from near where we live. So tonight we're going to finish up the day 3 of the Afroman hearing. Really, these are just like the closing arguments. Probably be under an hour, maybe like 40 minutes or so, if that. And then after that, we're going to go right into that snap hearing that was last week that we missed. But let's get started. Again, I'm very excited to hear these closing arguments. I was a little concerned that this hearing was going to be boring, but the last couple days of watching it with you guys, it was so interesting. And like somebody wrote in my comments, and I think it's just the perfect depiction of the Afroman trial. It's poetic justice, because Afroman's home was broken into. He was raided by the police on what he calls like a, I don't know, like a false or a fake warrant, but it was legal. They legally raided his home. There was nothing for them to find. None of the allegations were true whatsoever. They had nothing that they could charge him with, but they put him through hell. And as a result, he did what he does best, and he made music about it, and he blasted them on social media, which is his God-given First Amendment American right. But they turned around using state funds, and they sued him for defamation and slander to the tune of over $4 million. And the reality is that just made him more famous. If it wasn't for this trial, he wouldn't have gotten the fame and the accolades and the money that he's gotten over the last couple of years. So they're claiming that, you know, he ruined their lives or whatever, but they made him even more famous. And people are like singing Afroman's praises after this. I mean, me personally, I knew him from, you know, the 90s and his famous, you know, parody songs. I really hadn't heard about him in many years. You know, this trial really brought to light who Afroman is. And I personally think he is like an American patriot, an American hero. I definitely support him. I support his music. On July 4th, I was literally listening to the Freedom of Speech album over and over, just cracking up. Like, the songs are so funny. Because again, guys, you know, he was sued after he made the Lemon Pound Cake album. And if the officers of Adams County thought that was bad, the Freedom of Speech album is so much worse. It's so funny. But let's continue.
Renew your motion for Rule 15 dismissal, which the court will overrule. Mr. Klingler responded to your inquiry about media access incorporated.
Yes, Your Honor. Just for the sake of the record, we had a telephone conference on this. We had discussed this issue. They had not pled. They are technically in default of the answer during that telephone conference, which was not on the records. We discussed what would happen with that. Mr. Klingler said he would evaluate it. We are now about ready to do closing statements. No evidence has been presented against him. Mr. Klingler has not asked for a default judgment. He seems to be wanting to put everything on my client, which It's very strange why, when he has a default, he wouldn't make a motion for such, but we would ask that the record be cleaned up in that issue.
Yeah, I'm going to clean up the record, and we are willing to dismiss that party from the case.
Media access incorporated.
Yes.
We've registered an objection to him not doing a directed verdict, doing a default verdict on that, and therefore increasing damages upon my client if they should be found.
No, I think he gets to own his own complaint, so I just have to follow his lead. But I get what you're saying, and
I can
appreciate
argue
your-
for mitigation of attorney fees and stuff that he has done.
No, if it gets to that, if it gets to that, that's not a part of the jury's deliberation.
I just have to, I'm trying to think a step ahead.
I like that. Off the record, please. Go get him. You with Mr. Baylor?
Time to go. See, I knew that. I waited the extra 30 seconds.
You got 6 cents for it.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your patience. Have a seat. That actually was about 45 minutes, so I didn't gauge my time very well, but thank you for your patience. We are moving ahead, as you know, so most people don't growl about that, but I try to at least respect your time and tell you what we're doing. We made it through, like, the corrections to the jury instructions. Like I've been trying to educate you all the way through. The jury instructions are the textbook at the end. So the lawyers had a chance to drill those down. As I said before, closing arguments are the attorney's argument about what they think the evidence means and how you should do whatever it is they think you should do. So they go first, Mr. Klingler, then Mr. Osborne, then Mr. Klingler. There's like a total of 35 minutes. So I'm going to think 20, 35, 15. But Mr. Klingler can kind of manipulate his time depending on how he wants to do it. So in an hour, you'll be talking to me for about 30 minutes of instructions before you start your deliberations. That's what's ahead of you. If you take notes, just write down argument, not evidence. Go ahead, Mr. Klingler.
Thank you, Your Honor. Morning, folks. When this trial started, I told you it was about intentional lies that are designed to hurt people. It's not about freedom of speech. It's about defamation. It's about false light defamation, intentional lies designed to hurt people. You've heard all the evidence. You've seen the witnesses. I'm not going to go over it. But I will say a few things to underscore what I think is most important for you to keep in mind as this case is turned over to you. From me, from the plaintiffs, to you. Mr. Foreman perpetuated lies intentionally, repeatedly, over 3.5 years on the internet about these 7 brave deputy sheriffs who've lived in this county for years, risked their lives for this.
He perpetuated lies about these brave sheriffs. No, they perpetuated a lie by breaking into his home without really a very good warrant whatsoever. because if there was any validity to it, they would have found something to charge him with, but they found nothing. And Afroman literally had no criminal record to suggest that he was a violent criminal that traffics drugs or kidnaps. The only issue that Afroman ever had in his life is he had a misdemeanor. I think the story was some lady got on stage at one of his concerts and was behind him, and he didn't know who it was, and like was startled and ended up like hitting her. I don't even know how he got a misdemeanor for it, but you know, no real history of anything that they're accusing him of. So just keep that in mind.
County for years, done their job, been in the community for many, many years. Mr. Foreman did it intentionally. Mr. Foreman knew that what he posted on the internet were lies. He knew there was no theft. He knew there was no sex with Randy Walters' wife. And he certainly knew all of the stuff he's repeatedly posted about Lisa Phillips up until Friday and probably later were lies too. What are we going to do about that? Mr. Foreman told you from the witness stand there's nothing we can do to stop him because he has freedom of speech to lie about people intentionally. During jury selection, we talked about that. And you all agreed that it's not okay to tell an intentional lie about someone that hurts them. We all agreed. And the judge is going to tell you that in the law that he gives you. So Mr. Foreman is legally wrong when he says he has free speech to tell harmful lies about people and get away with it. That's just legally wrong. You also told me in jury selection that even if somebody does something to you that hurts you, that you think is wrong, like a search warrant execution that you think was unfair, even if somebody does that to you, you told me, we all agreed, that that doesn't justify telling intentional lies designed to hurt people. That's what you think. That's what the community thinks. That's what decent people think. But Mr. Foreman thinks it's okay to do what he's done over 3.5 years because they executed a search warrant that broke down his door and disconnected his cameras. You heard from the witness stand from Mr. Foreman the callous indifference that he showed to what he's done, the harm he's done.
But why does he have to feel bad? Why does he have to apologize? Think about it, guys. They were wrong. They knew that they were wrong because they had nothing, literally no evidence to bring any charges against him. They knew that they were wrong. They also knew, like we heard the first and second day, that there was a disparity with the counting and the money that they took and the money they gave back. They all know that. He didn't even know that. He was told that by the department. So that's where he got that information from. So they knew that they were wrong about the raid. They knew that even though they had a legal warrant, they knew that it didn't produce anything and they were wrong. They knew that they destroyed his house and property. They knew they confiscated his property, didn't give it back to him right away, and didn't give it all back at all. Why couldn't they apologize to him? Why couldn't they have issued some? They could have even issued something publicly. Hey, Mr. Foreman, we are sorry that we raided your home. It was a mistake, and we're sorry. And, you know, we destroyed your property, and we're gonna help you fix that. We're gonna give you, you know, the state funds because we messed up, and we're gonna help you repair your home. Oh, okay, we admitted that there's a discrepancy in the money we gave you back. We're gonna find that $400, or, you know, we're gonna take some of the state funds because we messed up, we lost it, or somebody took it, and we're gonna give that back to you. Why couldn't they do that? I think if they did that, that probably would have gone pretty far with him. He wouldn't, not necessarily would have made these songs, or maybe he would have taken down these posts. Maybe he would have got up on camera and told everybody how awesome the Adams County Sheriff Department is because they admitted when they were wrong and they made amends. That would have cost them a lot less than going to trial. Trials are very expensive. I don't know how much this trial costs. Sometimes trials can cost $1 million. I'm not making that up. That's real. Litigation is very expensive. Whereas they could have spent a fraction of that money, helped him repair his home, made sure he got that $400 that there was a discrepancy about, and apologized. Why couldn't they do that?
It's imprinted in your minds, I'm sure, like it is in mine. The tears, the agony from some of these witnesses, don't forget that when you're back in the jury room. That's what this case is about. You are here because you agreed to be here. You showed up on the first day. Not everybody does. A lot of people don't respond to their summons. You did. I asked you, do you want to be on this jury? And you all said, yes, I agreed to be on this jury. You're all here now, in this place, in this courtroom, for a reason. And I believe there's a power higher than us that brought you here today to do this job, and that you are the chosen people to do it. Nobody else is going to do it. There's not going to be another trial. There's not going to be a second chance. This is the day to decide whether Mr. Foreman gets away with what he's done, and whether these plaintiffs deserve something to make up for what they've been through, and whether the community is told that what he did is unacceptable. It's not okay.
Yeah. What he did was very acceptable, and I think more American citizens should do the same thing. Because I know that he's not the only person that this has happened to. I know from watching Dave's streams from the last couple of years that this happens more often than we know. That people that have never had any type of criminal history have been raided, politically persecuted. I mean, it even happened to our current president. So this is happening. And I think more people need to get out of their house and tell the world what happened. Because it's not right. It's not right to be scared in your own home and to fear law enforcement when you have not done anything wrong, when you're a law-abiding citizen. It's very scary, and it's not right. And when law enforcement does something wrong, they deserve to be called out on it. Just like when criminals do something wrong, they deserve to be called out on it. But law enforcement doesn't like to admit when they've done anything wrong. And that is one of the reasons that Americans don't trust law enforcement, don't trust their government, because when they're wrong, they don't admit to it. They try to gaslight us or play the victims in this role. But I think admitting when you do something wrong and apologizing really goes a long way.
We talked about different kinds of damages. There's not going to be economic damages in this case. There's no doctor bills. There's no damaged property. There's damage to reputation. There's pain and suffering. There's public humiliation. There's everything.
But guys, don't you think it's publicly humiliating to have the cops raid your home? Like, isn't that publicly humiliating? Or isn't it publicly humiliating to have somebody sue you for slander and defamation and drag your name through the court system and you're all over the news because somebody sued you and accused you of a crime that you didn't commit? I think that is way more humiliating than somebody writing a song about a government official that messed up.
You saw and heard from these detectives from the witness stand. And the only thing you can do as a jury to decide this case is to render a verdict of money that somehow stands in, somehow represents the harm that these deputy sheriffs have been put through over 3.5 years. That's all you can do. You can't issue an order that says stop. You can't issue an order that says, say you're sorry. All you can do is issue a verdict for an amount that fairly stands in, represents what they've been through, what they've lost. No one else is going to do it. The judge isn't going to do it. Court of Appeals isn't going to do it. It's your job. And you're the people meant to do it. Now, I told you in jury selection, if we got to this point, I'd try to give you some ideas about how to evaluate what kind of verdict might make sense in this case. I told you then, and I'll tell you now, there's no formula. There's no easy answer. But there is an answer. And it's the answer that you folks decide among yourselves fairly represents the injuries that these deputies have suffered. And I'll start by posing this question. Do you think that if there had been an advertisement in
I still don't understand, and please put this in the chat, like, what damages do these people have? Like, none of them were fired from the Adams County Sheriff's Department. Like, one of them, I think, left, but that was voluntary. Nobody was fired. So this didn't affect their job. It didn't affect their income. They were embarrassed. How do you measure that? How do you quantify that into $4 million? Doesn't make any sense to me. What are the real damages? These guys are public. They work for the government. They're officers. They know what comes along with the job. They know the risks. when they mess up on duty, they know the risks that, if they piss off somebody that's a criminal, there could be violent repercussions. They understand those risks when they, sign up for the job. But what did Afroman do? He wrote a song. He wrote songs that were so ridiculous that nobody thought that they were really true. I do think that there is some truth to the things that he said, because he did testify that people would come up to him, like at the mall and at Walmart, and whisper stuff to him and tell him stuff about the officers and, give him gossip and dirt about them. But I mean, that's hearsay. But I do think that there could be some truth to the songs that he wrote and the things that he said. And that's why they're so upset. And that's why it had such an effect on them. Because, again, the stuff that he was saying is very ridiculous. If there's no truth to it whatsoever, then what does it matter? Who cares? It's a joke.
Some newspaper that said, we will give you $2 million if you are willing to go through what Lisa Phillips has been through for the last 3.5 years. Would you take that deal? Do you think she would have taken that deal? Yeah, 2 million, that's a, maybe I'll go through that. Of course not. Do you think Randy Walters, do you think Brian Newland, do you think any of these deputies would have accepted some amount of money in order to go through, in exchange for going through what they've been through? I don't think so.
But then why are they asking for
And I think
$4 million then?
Nothing is worth going through what they've been through. And, of course, he says he's not going to stop. He says nothing can stop him. Maybe something can stop him if you tell him through your verdict that he needs to stop. I'm going to tell you what I believe is a fair verdict for these plaintiffs. And it's up to you, of course, again, to make the decision. But I would ask you, I'm going to ask you, and there's a verdict form which, excuse me 1 minute. Folks, I'm going to show you these forms that you're going to be filling out, just so you're familiar with them. This is just an example. You're going to have a different form for each of these plaintiffs, okay? This one happens to be a verdict form for Lisa Phillips. And I believe the evidence is overwhelming that you'll find in favor of Lisa Phillips. This happens to be her false light claim. There's a separate claim for defamation, a separate form for defamation, and you'll see the jury instructions. Judge Hine has already talked some about that with you. So this is just an example of the verdict form that I'm going to ask you all to sign. in favor of Lisa Phillips and all of the plaintiffs on their false light and their defamation claims. Now, there's another form called an interrogatory, and I'm just showing you Lisa Phillips's form. And it says, we, the jury, find damages for plaintiff as follows. And then it gives a little description of the kind of damages. And there's a line for your decision, and there's signature lines for each of you to sign. For Lisa Phillips, I'm not going to show you every form. For Lisa Phillips, folks, I'm asking you to put $1.5 million in that verdict form.
This is very egregious. $1.5 million?
$1.5
because she didn't like a
million
song that
for
was written
Lisa
about
Phillips,
her or a social media post?
for what she's been through for
It's kinda
3.5
crazy.
years. Maybe going through for who knows how long. For Brian Newland, I'm asking you to issue a verdict for $1 million for what he's been through with his family, the loss of his dream job here in Adams County. For Randy Walters, I'm asking you for a verdict of $1 million for what he's been through with the allegations and vile videos about his wife.
But remember, we heard Rhonda's testimony. Rhonda wanted to make sure the jury understood clearly that the Afroman songs and posts had nothing to do with the dissolution of her marriage. She testified that she was unfazed by it and that she's a school teacher and some of her students commented on the video, but they didn't think that it was real. They didn't think that she slept with Afroman. And she wanted to make sure that the court knew explicitly that her divorce had nothing to do with the Afroman situation, that her divorce was because of her husband, Sean Grooms, and supposedly, according to Afroman's new song about Sean Grooms, he cheated on her. And I think she testified also that she had a restraining order against him as well. So this is kind of BS that he's, trying to pull at the jury's heartstrings and saying that this guy deserves $1 million because of his marriage ended. No. His wife, or his ex-wife, made it very clear that it had nothing to do with Afroman, that he messed up on his own, and the Afroman situation had nothing to do with her divorce.
For the other 4 plaintiffs, Sean Grooms, Sean Cooley, Justin Cooley, and Mike Estep, I'm asking you for a total, for all 4 of them, of $400,000 divided among them however you see fit based on their testimony.
Oh, also, I just want to point out too, because he said it in his testimony, Brian Newland didn't lose his dream job. He voluntarily resigned. He didn't get fired. He chose to leave. I mean, he said he chose to leave because of public backlash, but we don't know if that's true. He didn't get fired, so we can't say that, he was forced. He made that choice. All of them got to keep their job. They had no real damages. And Rhonda would have divorced her husband regardless of the Afroman song or not.
You, of course, can award less. You can issue a verdict for more. That's what I'm asking you to say in your verdict form based on this testimony. Now, let me close my remarks by looking into the future here and looking at the future if there's a verdict for the plaintiffs and you award the plaintiffs a fair amount of money. What happens? The plaintiffs are vindicated. The court of public opinion out there, the press, which I know you haven't been looking at, they don't know the facts. You know the facts. And a verdict for the plaintiff will say they were wronged, he was wrong. A verdict for the plaintiffs will make up in some way for what they've been through. A verdict for the plaintiffs will say that we don't condone, we don't approve, you can't get away with what Mr. Foreman's done. Not in this community.
Just think about what would have happened, what message we would have received if Afroman was found guilty. I think that verdict would have been so much more dangerous for the American people. To me, a guilty verdict would have meant police can do whatever they want. They can go into your house. They can break your stuff. They can terrorize you and your family. They can take your money. They don't have to give it back. Or they just give you back scraps. They don't have to give you the full amount. And you can't do anything about it. You can't cause violence on them because that's illegal. And you can't even talk about it. You have to just shut your mouth and take it. That's what the message would have been if the jury found Afroman guilty.
Not in this country.
No, in this country we believe in the First Amendment.
Where we live.
He needs to go move to the
That's
UK.
what a verdict for the plaintiffs will say. Let's look at another possible future if there were to be a verdict for the defendant, or if there were to be a verdict with a small amount of money attached to it. In that case, in that world, in that future, the world is told what he did is okay.
What he did was
What they
okay.
went through
What he did was
is
right.
no big deal.
And everybody should be doing that.
We don't really care. We think it's fine. That's what a verdict for the defendant or a small verdict would say. They would go home subject to even more ridicule. Yeah, you took him on and you lost. See, what he did was fine. I don't have to tell you, you know, that's not the message we want to send. It's not the message you want to send. Folks, I'm done. I've done all I can. These folks called me 3 years ago now and asked, what can we do to stop this? And here we are today.
I don't understand why his lawyer didn't suggest, why don't you apologize? Why don't you take the money you were going to pay me and fix his home up? And, call the press in and let them know, you know what, we were wrong. we were wrong. We should have looked at that warrant and the situation a little bit more clearly. We used too much force. We broke this guy's stuff. We weren't careful with the evidence. We didn't give him back all his money. We need to issue an apology, and we need to help him fix his property and make sure we get that money back to him. I think that would have been a much better thing for Adams County to do and a much cheaper way to do it. And I think the public would have had a lot more respect for them. And probably Afroman would have come out and apologized and, let the world know he was just kidding about it. I think that would have been a much better alternative for them. I mean, I love this outcome. I think it's great. I think everybody should do what Afroman has done and stand up for yourself and call out corruption. But that's not what this great attorney advised them to do. But he still got paid, so there's that.
I've done what I can. They've done what they can. They've suffered through the publicity. They could have stopped this case at any time if they would have kowtowed to the pressure, public humiliation that Mr. Foreman continued to put them through, but they didn't. They bravely stood behind their case and their right not to be dragged through the mud with lies in the media. They've done all they can. And now I am giving their case and this decision to you. It's out of my hands. You have to decide what to say to Mr. Foreman and what to say to the community about what he's done and the effects that it's had on these folks. I have full confidence, I fully trust you to make the right decision, to make a fair decision, and to come back with a verdict that's fair.
Jury did make
for
a
each
fair
one of these
decision. They made
plaintiffs,
a great decision
and that
not
tells
to
the
listen to this
community
joker.
what you really think about this case. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Clinton. You have
All right, now we get to hear the man himself, Afroman's defense attorney, with that powerful, serious, manly beard. I just wish that he was wearing like a American flag suit or like a Constitution tie. That would have been pretty epic. But I guess you don't want to steal the show from Afroman.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. This has been a long 3 days. It took a second for me to even count the number. It's been so long. A lot's happened. You've done your duty as jurors. You've paid attention to the evidence. I'm proud of that. What makes our country great is you have the right to have a jury trial. You have the right to people in the community to see this, weigh the evidence, and make a decision. And I'm proud that you guys are here and doing that. We started this time, I talked about this case was about freedom of speech. But let's talk about what it's also about. It's also about music. Not all music is tasteful. Not everybody likes all music. There's some songs I hate. I think we can find plenty of people that find songs they do not like. But Mr. Foreman, Joe, is a rapper and comedian. It's what he's done his whole life is rap, make songs. We got to think of what rap is, because music does not exist in a vacuum. Music evolves over time. Take a look at jazz. It's evolved. At one time, it was distinct in a certain subculture, and it has now expanded. Rap is the same. Rap started out as a means for people to express social commentary, opinions through entertainment. Look at the song by NWA. What are they called? Fuck the Police? I think I said that right. It's a social commentary on what was going on in their lives. Their personal effect, the personal things happening to them, combined with entertainment, which unfortunately is exaggeration. Opinion, nothing of fact in that song. It's a commentary on society. And so when you look at rap, you see that over and over again. I had my secretary print me a couple songs, rap songs, while I was pouring a cup of coffee. And the first one was Carly B, WAP. I find it bad to say what WAP means, but it's a popular song. I think it's somewhat derogatory. But then again, I'm not the audience for that song, and I know that. I know nothing in that song. Nothing talking about is true. I know it's entertainment. I know it's social commentary. Miss Grooms testified even her students knew that at a young age. The same thing I knew when I was watching Johnny Carson, The Late Night Show, and SNL, Saturday Night Live, with my grandfather when I was a kid. That's all entertainment. They make fun of everybody for entertainment. And some of it is a social commentary. But it is not fact. And everybody knows that. Nobody looks at Lil Wayne's song Pussy Monster and says there's a monster in that song. Everybody knows it's exaggeration for entertainment. Is he commenting on something? Sure. But it's not fact. And I can keep going. Megan Thee Stallion with sex talk. I mean, it just goes on. They use derogatory language. It's designed to entertain. Drew Hastings, former mayor of Hillsborough, was a comedian. I got to go to one of his stand-ups. Some of it was funny, some of it wasn't. Some of his jokes, like those of Eddie Murphy and Richard Pryor, some of them are not tasteful, but they're still jokes. They're not facts. And we know that. That's what a reasonable person listening to that would understand. And that's the point. This is not a vacuum. We don't live in a vacuum. Let's face it, if we lived in a vacuum, we'd all be dead because we couldn't breathe. So we live in a world full of everything, where we see things. We watch SNL. We know it's entertainment. We know it's going to pick on people. We understand that they're picking on public officials. Well, they picked on Joe. They pick on Donald Trump all the time, Sleepy Joe. I mean, go down the list, even Teflon Ron was made fun of. So as you go back, nobody thinks that's fact. Nobody's going to take it that way. When they post their clips on YouTube, when they post their clips on Facebook, people don't look at it and go, that's the truth. No, they understand it's comedy. They understand they're going to talk about it going forward. And if you look at his posts, you see the little signs of that too. Iteration. Things that you see in a song. I mean, because after all, you know, a song's catchy, right? It has a beat, song, you know, words rhyme. You know, she thinks my tractor's sexy, and, you know, it sticks with you. When we listen to Lemon Pound Cake, you heard the iteration. You heard how it came together as entertainment. So we don't exist in a vacuum, and a reasonable person doesn't exist in a vacuum. As the judge said, you are a reasonable people. You get to decide what's reasonable, which means you get to use your experience. You get to use your understanding of what those are, of your understanding of Joe, of your understanding of rap music, music in general. I'm not going to sit here and say that these 7 people were happy about what happened to them. I'm not going to say that. That'd be stupid. But what I am going to say is they are public officials. We see it on the news all the time, public officials made fun of. Let's go back to voir dire. During my voir dire, we talked about, with the one juror who's gone, we talked about that, yes, I ran for public office. She agreed I put myself out as a public official. She agreed that it was an opinion when someone called me a baby killer. Even our witnesses on the stand, I asked that question. They said a crooked defense attorney is not a vine, it's a matter of opinion. Crooked cops, dirty defense attorneys, Oh, wait, one witness did want to say I might not have taken a shower. But those are all opinions, exaggerations, not statements of fact. And we know that. And that's why public officials are held to a higher standard, because that standard is what is expected of them as subjecting themselves to public scrutiny. They all testified that people have criticized their work. I mean, after all, we look at the search. There is, even Mr. Newland admitted it wasn't perfect. I think we can see from how the money was handled, the investigation. I would have liked to have seen a more thorough job myself. I mean, we have a chain of custody, the money that just leaves it laying there. Mr. Newland didn't know that. We have an unsealed evidence bag. We have 10% of all evidence, money evidence in the Adams County evidence locker miscounted. And then keep in mind that miscount on those is less than what is alleged to miss here. We got people saying we had a miscount, yet they can't even bother to notify the court in an official document that they made a mistake. Just let it ride. As far as the public record knows, which they never corrected, Mr. Foreman never got back all of his money. They want to talk about an investigation, but they can't even put in a single piece of paper to correct his mistake. I don't know if I'd call that lazy or what. But I think it goes to what you consider a fact. Because what is a fact? We can't always know what a fact is. A fact is something you can disprove, right? But can we truly disprove that? Looking at all the evidence, there is questions. If there's questions, it's not a fact. Now, people will form opinions based on that. I formed an opinion. I imagine everybody here's formed an opinion. We know that they formed an opinion because they didn't like being called a thief. So that was their opinion. But people are allowed to have opinions. People are allowed to express them. What people are expressing when they call them thief is not a literal statement. It is not a fact. It is a social commentary on the fact that they didn't do things correctly. And they can't even articulate how they could fix it. That is a social commentary if I ever heard one. They don't like it? That's not their choice to like it or not. They're public officials. They're going to be held to a higher standard. Their work's going to be criticized. I mean, that's just what happens when you're a public official. No reasonable person would expect a police officer not to be criticized. They've all been called names before. Has it affected them personally? Yes. Miss Grooms testified it made no difference in her life. Her kids didn't take it seriously. And she's taught for damn near 30 years. But they seem to take it seriously. And I come back to Mr. Grooms. He's worried about going out on a call and being shot. Now, maybe I'm old-fashioned. But if I'm going out on a call, I'm worried about getting shot, I'm going to call my wife and tell her to be safe. Not sit here and go, I'm worried about me. That's not what you do. You take care of your family. Mr. Walters wanted to point that out. That just goes to show us he didn't take it seriously. Now, I'm not going to say they're not afraid. Anytime they go on a call, the highway patrol will tell you scariest thing's a traffic stop. You know nothing about the person. You're there by yourself, and things can change in an instant. Is that scary? Fuck yeah. I'd be scared. But if you're truly scared, you take the steps for it. You start having your family do stuff. You start doing that. If you believe what you're saying, you take the steps towards it. You didn't take the steps. No one else talked about how they took the steps either, did they? And why does that matter? Because a reasonable person is going to look at that. After all, let's go back to me not taking a shower. How would you know I didn't take a shower? Hair clumpy, probably matted, probably got dirt all over me. That's how you would see. That's how you would prove if that's an opinion or fact. Now, even then you might say Dave just fell in the mud. But no reasonable person would take it in the vacuum. And I want you to think about everything in context. What rap is music, how it's entertainment, how the language works on it, how jokes are made. I want you to think back to that, because that colors how you see it. I love picking on Joe. He's a good sport for it. Look at that suit. Does this look like a man who thinks that everybody's going to assume that everything he's saying is fact? I mean, he's like a comedian. He exaggerates for the sake of entertainment. That's who he is. I'm not going to say it's tasteful to everyone, but some people do find it entertaining. I asked an important question about them. I said, do you believe everything in the newspaper? No. Do you believe everything you read on the internet? No. We all know that to be true. A reasonable person knows that. People can post opinions, social commentary, and hurtful things all over the internet. And it is just to be expected. That's why we are supposed to use our own filter, use our common sense, use our experiences in life. So while hurtful, it was not fact. It was music, entertainment. Stuff that no reasonable person would understand, especially not a public official, because we see it on TV all the time. We see it on the internet. You see it on Facebook. Sometimes people want to turn off Facebook because there's so much political commentary and stuff. But that's expected. Do I expect everything I read's fact? I don't even think most of it's fact. I think it's everybody's opinion, and opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one and it stinks. But that doesn't mean they can't have them. That doesn't mean they can't express them, and that doesn't mean they can't make a song about it. Truth is a defense. That's why we talked about the theft. That's why we showed all that. Because I wanted you to see how the money was handled. There's a lot of confusion around it. And for that reason. Before I get to another point, I want to address something that's bouncing around my head. Bob says, what does this message send if you find for Mr. Foreman? I rephrase that question a little differently. What does this message send if we find that music and social commentary, while maybe not the most tasteful thing in the world, is silenced because a public official, while hurt by it, yes, unhappy by it, yes, pissed off, yes, emotional, yes. What opinion does that sound? I mean, if you can sue people, music artists, comedians, to shut them down, that's what we're looking at here. I'm sorry they feel the way they do. But there's a certain amount that you have to take as a public official. It's part of the duties as a job. As we talked about during voir dire, as I've talked about them being called a baby killer, there's certain things you take and you move on. It's part of the job. The plaintiffs, or I should say Bob, talks about how they wanted it to stop. Where was the certified cease and desist letter? Where was all this done? None of that was done until after they started the lawsuit. Until after they brought it to court to make it stop.
So I just gotta pause there because that's a little bit alarming. I didn't know that. So they never sent him an official cease and desist letter? They just went ahead and sued him? That's kind of crazy if you think about it, because they're testifying, oh, we asked him to stop and he doubled down. If it was that important, why not file something? File a cease and desist. They never did that. Because really, guys, this was all about the money. Afroman had some success making the Lemon Pound Cake album. People got on board. They thought what happened to him and his songs were funny. And they are trying to take that they were trying to take that money from him. You know, he had a little bit of success and they wanted to take that away from him. That's so sad. And again, like I said, what are the real damages? I don't think the prosecutor gave us any examples of any real legitimate damages. They just wanted his money because they didn't like what he said. But that's like mind blowing that they never sent a cease and desist. It's crazy to me.
It's what they wanted to. They wanted to make it stop. Yet they asked for money. The commentary on them is nebulous at best. You can see that when you look at it. We have Beetle Bailey, Gomer Pyle, Colonel King Kong Bundy. Some of these names are not as bad as others, yes, but they're all for artistic purpose. They're all for jokes. They're all for entertainment. This is not to paint them in a real life. No reasonable person would think that. It's kind of interesting because even Mr. Newland agreed that when he was called a pedophile by Mr. Foreman, yes, that is a horrible thing to call a person. But even he said it was Mr. Foreman's opinion. So he didn't believe it was a fact. If your own witness doesn't believe it's a fact, how can a reasonable person find it's a fact? Bob went to great lengths to say nothing will stop him. Shows us where we're at. We got to stop his expression. We got to stop entertainment. We got to stop exaggeration. That's what Bob's talking about. What chilling effect does that have on the world we live in? Think about it. You don't like what a commissioner does. You don't like what our prosecutor does. You don't like what any public official does, and you make a joke. And you're drugging the court. It may not have been a tasteful joke. May have been a bad joke. May have been the greatest joke ever. But what we're saying is if they don't like it, we're back here. What does that say to freedom of speech? What does that say to the world we live in? That's what this case is about. And Bob knows that. That's why he mentions it. That's why when...
And also, you guys, this case is about weaponizing the justice system against American citizens. Exactly what he said. Oh, you don't like what I have to say about a public official, so I'm going to take you to court. Again, if you don't know, litigation is extremely expensive. But it didn't cost Adams County officers anything because the state was picking up the tab. But the average person cannot afford civil litigation. It's very expensive, like literally hundreds of thousands of dollars before you even get to trial, just on the back and forth and the motions. Most people cannot afford it. And actually, I think Dave was on a podcast a few months ago with Viva Frey, where those two were talking about how lawyers can't even afford litigation. Like, lawyers can't even afford to pay, those expensive legal fees. It's just gotten so out of hand with how much it costs to go through litigation. So in my opinion, this case was also about our justice system being weaponized against American citizens.
You look at defamation and the jury instructions, you'll see that the first element of it is a statement. Portrayal of fact. Has to be portrayed as fact. No music video portrays as a fact. I don't watch Fuck Those Police and turn around and say, you know what, that's a fact. No. I say that's a song, it's entertainment, and move on. Sometimes I try to figure out what the words mean, what kind they're getting at, but I don't expect them to present a fact. Fourth element is the proximate cause. It's an interesting question there, because you'll get the definition of causation and proximate. And we never talked about that really during the trial, and it's going to be something that I want to discuss. They talked about getting phone calls. None of those posts. Joe never said, call them and tell them this. Mr. Cooley testified that they mailed pound cakes to the office. Joe never said send them a lemon pound cake. These are things that other people have done. Joe never directed them to do it. He didn't cause it. He made a joke. He cannot control how people take it. What they do, he's not that. All he can do is make a joke, make a song. So that's something to consider. Was he the proximate cause, or was it someone else? I want you to understand when they get to the question of malice, if you get that far, it has to be actual malice. Public officials, it's a higher standard. Why? Because we hold public officials to a high standard. Let's talk about the false light. That's their second cause of action. That says that a reasonable person would be justified in the eyes of the community, feeling seriously offended and aggrieved. I want you to go in on the eyes of the community. They want to say people's humiliating them, calling them names. The reality is a reasonable person in the eyes of the community is going to say, it's a song. It's a joke. I was flabbergasted to hear it myself, that they even thought it was a joke before they brought the lawsuit. Go to a Halloween party and bring a lemon pound cake. That, I almost have no words for that, honestly, because we're hurt, but it's a joke. Which one is it? So a reasonable person in the eyes of the community would understand it's a joke. Mr. Estep testified about the joke of the shirt. We got the pound cake joke. There's various jokes for this. This was not as negative. This has not changed their view in the eyes of the community, because your reputation, which is what they claim is hurt, your reputation is like a shirt. You eat a hot dog, you drop mustard on it, you get stains on your shirt. Nobody's reputation is clean. Everything you do affects your reputation. The way you perform your job affects your reputation. They all admitted to that on the stand because I asked that question. They all said it does. How they counted that money affects their reputation. People can form opinions based on how they did their job and criticize them on it. That's a right we have. You have to forgive me, I have to flip through these some. We didn't have a lot of time to prepare as things change on the fly. I think as you go back and deliberate, take a look at all the exhibits, analyze it in the context of music, entertainment, opinion, social commentary. It's not a fact. And if you look at it, you can see that. Like I said, it may not be tasteful, may not be nice, but even SNL's not nice. South Park's not nice. These things are social commentaries, jokes, entertainment, and some of them are not nice. But you don't have to like everything. You don't have to like everything said about you, and you don't have the right to tell everybody that everything said about you should be sued for, especially if you're a public official. As such, I ask you to deliver a verdict in Joe's favor on all claims. I ask that because when you look at it, no reasonable person could see it as a fact. No reasonable person could see it as even false light. The community, if people called them, that's because the social commentary resonated with someone, resonated with what people experienced in the world. We've lived through a turbulent year. So we've all seen on the news what people are experiencing all over the country. Social commentary resonates because of that. That doesn't make him the proximate cause. That shows a deeper concern in our country that we should be addressing. Not sitting here trying to decide if a music video is a fact or not. That's what's at issue here. And I'm confident as you go back in deliberations, you'll come to that conclusion too. And with that, I thank you again for your service. Because it is not easy, and what you're about to do is not easy. It takes time and deliberation. It takes hard work. And I appreciate that you guys are willing to do it. And I reiterate again, that's what makes us a great country. Thank you very much.
Mr. Osborne? Go ahead, Mr. Klingler.
Thank you, Your Honor. Nothing Mr. Osborne said about sexually explicit songs out in society refer to specific people in the community like the songs that are at issue here. It's not the same thing. We all know that. These weren't opinions. Mr. Foreman didn't say, in my opinion, Brian Newland is a pedophile. In my
The dude is famous for singing Because I Got High. He doesn't have to preface it. He literally came to court head to toe American flag. Nobody is saying that Afroman is an expert on identifying pedophiles. That is insane, like, counter arguments.
opinion, they're all thieves. In my opinion, I fucked his wife doggy style. He said it like they were facts. And I think Judge Hine is going to instruct you, based on everything that's happened so far, that these were not opinions, they were stated as fact. And your job is to decide whether those.
And in the song, Because I Got High, he states as a fact, I was gonna go to school, but then I got high. Was he supposed to rap? It's just my opinion that I got too high, so I can't go to school. It doesn't have the same kind of ring to it, guys. It's a ridiculous argument. Oh my gosh.
Facts were true or not. And we know they're not. The case isn't about lemon pound cake. It's about intentional lies designed to hurt people, and they hurt people. If somebody in the jury room says, well, what about his First Amendment rights? You know, and the law tells you, that doesn't allow lies that hurt people. If someone tells you it's just artistic expression, he ought to be free to say what he wants, the answer is he's not allowed to wrap up harmful lies into songs, so-called art, put them out there, and get away with it. The packaging of the lie doesn't make it okay. The message was clear. And Mr. Foreman doesn't get to wrap himself in the American flag
Apparently he does.
and say, you can't touch me, I can say what I want, no matter how untrue it is, no matter how much pain it causes people, no matter for how long, because I have freedom of speech. He can't do that. I'm confident you'll tell him he can't do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Klingler. Let me acknowledge Mr. Osborne.
Your Honor, I didn't mean to interrupt you. My thing is, I was going to ask before we read the jury instructions if I could if we could restroom break for that, because I know it's going to take some time to read it.
Everybody's going to stand in their seat and stretch. Nobody's going to leave the room but you. Because you're pretty prompt with that, so go for it.
Thank you.
I'll just stand up. Blood flowing.
That was true.
Well, you're on my team.
Okay, so, spoiler alert, because this is from March, he won. The jury found Afroman not guilty because of freedom of speech. And there's a couple things I want to go over before we move on to the next hearing. But, okay, so first of all, during before we got to trial, Afroman put in what's called a counterclaim. So we know that Adams County sued him, and then he put some counterclaims. But the issue was a lot of his counterclaims were they weren't resolved, but the judge already ruled on them during summary judgment. And basically he ruled that his counterclaims should be dismissed because they did have a legal warrant. They weren't trespassing. They had a legal warrant. And fine, whatever. But still in all, the final jury verdict, which actually happened March 18th, 2026, was that he was not guilty, and nobody from the Adams County Sheriffs deserved to recover any money whatsoever. So they found him not guilty of defamation, and oh no, actually the jury found in favor of Afroman on defamation, and the jury ruled on invasion of privacy. So again, the main basis of this ruling was that his speech is protected by the First Amendment, that Afroman is known as a parody rapper. Nobody could reasonably believe that the things that he was singing about and posting were real. It wasn't defamatory. It was a joke. Everybody knows Afroman is like a comedic rapper. But also the ACLU filed an amicus brief supporting that position, characterizing the lawsuit as a slap-style attempt to punish protected speech. The other issue, and this is why Afroman's attorneys are appealing the case. They're not appealing, that he won and he was found not guilty. So he did win. Let me just clarify that. But the judge decided, and I don't know how it is in Ohio, but in some courts, if the defendant is found not guilty, or the defendant's counterclaims, or wins on the counterclaims, then the prosecution has to pay the court fees, and sometimes even the attorney fees. But this judge, Jonathan Hine, I think I'm saying that right, he ruled that the court costs would be split between the two parties. See, I think that's very unfair because we know that the officers are not actually paying the court fees. We know that they're using, state funds to bring about this case and to pay for the court fees. So I think that that's wrong. I agree with Afroman and his attorney. They should appeal that. He should not have to pay any of these fees because he was found not guilty. Why should he have to pay those fees? In my opinion, not only should he not have to pay the fees, but I think he should be compensated for his attorney fees because they brought all of these actions against him. It would have never happened if they didn't do all of this to begin with. He didn't start any of this. He just defended himself. So he is currently appealing the judge's ruling. So we don't know how that's going to shape up, but I wish him a lot of luck. I hope that he does prevail in the appellate court. But I do want to also say this before we move on to the next hearing. America is the most judicial country in the world. We can sue anybody for anything, really. I mean, I know you're not really supposed to say that. There are some guidelines, but the reality is a lot of people sue other people civilly for bogus stuff because they know they can work the system. The fact of the matter is over 90% of civil litigation never goes to trial. And one of the main reasons for it is because it is so expensive to litigate. And I've said this a couple times, but it's true. Look it up. I mean, it could cost somebody hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes even 7 figures, to litigate a case. Because sometimes these cases take years. I mean, this case was going on for a few years. So you could spend $1 million in legal fees and court fees and hiring expert witnesses and putting it all together, $1 million before you even step foot in the courtroom. And like I said, for most Americans, even for a lot of attorneys, they can't afford that. So a lot of times, plaintiffs knowingly will sue somebody or a corporation, really because they know that they don't want to go through the cost of litigation and they're just going to settle. And that's what happens with over 90% of civil cases. People just want to cut their losses. They don't want to see it out, and they just pay to get rid of it because in the long term, it's either too risky to continue litigation or it's just really too expensive. And I really think that that is wrong. First of all, I don't think that litigation should be so expensive. I think that if you truly have a case, you deserve your day in court. And I think it's actually more unfair to defendants, because if somebody can falsely accuse you of anything, and a lot of times we call it like throwing spaghetti on the wall to see what sticks. You know, people will just accuse you of ridiculous random things, put it all together in an effort to intimidate and extort you and just see what sticks. And it's embarrassing for people too, and it hurts their reputation, it hurts businesses' reputations to go through a lawsuit. So a lot of times, like I said, companies and people will just settle to just get it off their plate. But I think that, again, everybody deserves their day in court. It shouldn't take so long, and it shouldn't be so expensive. So that, in my opinion, is something that our legal system should actively try to change. But I know that that's not happening because, attorneys don't want to make less money. But that's a whole other issue in itself. I'm really happy with the results of this case because, again, it wasn't just about defamation or slander. It was about freedom of speech, and this is what makes America great, that we have the right to say what we want about our government officials. If they do something wrong and we don't like it, we can speak up about it. He didn't do anything wrong. He didn't use violence. He didn't go to their home. He didn't intimidate them. He made a song. He posted some stuff on social media. That's his right. And they should know better as police officers or sheriffs or whatever, that kind of goes along with the job. Like, our law makers and our police and sheriffs, they know that not everybody is a big fan of them. They know that going into the job. So it's just kind of eye-opening that they just didn't have thicker skin. But anyways, hang with me for like 1 minute. I'm going to put on the snap hearing right now.
This hearing on the Subcommittee on Delivering on Government Efficiency will come to order. I want to welcome everyone. Without objection, the chair may declare a recess at any time, and I recognize myself for the purpose of making an opening statement. Good morning. I want to welcome everybody. We are here to examine waste, fraud, and abuse in one of the largest government welfare programs. The Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, also known as food stamps, provides $100 billion annually in federal food assistance. Every dollar from this program is intended to help feed eligible individuals in need. That's not where every dollar goes, not by a long shot. In one state, food stamp enrollees own more than 14,000 luxury vehicles, including Lamborghinis and Bentleys, due to an eligibility loophole. And in 2024, $10 billion in food stamps benefits were improperly paid out by the states, which are charged with administering the program. The Government Accountability Office reports that these payments errors are mostly failures to verify recipients met all eligibility criteria, such as being in the country legally. Loopholes and incorrect payments are costly enough, but the tax dollars lost to outright fraud may be greater. For instance, the Government Accountability Office estimated that trafficking in food stamps is a $5 billion annual industry. Trafficking occurs when a crooked store owner profits off taxpayers by turning benefits into cash. For example, a customer swipes the EBT card for $200 in groceries. The clerk gives back $100 cash and pockets the difference. The customer then uses the cash to buy ineligible items such as alcohol or cigarettes. To address fraud in federal benefit programs, the President created in March the White House Task Force to Eliminate Fraud, led by Vice President Vance. Building on DOJ efforts, the task force is working to eliminate data silos that make it hard to access the data needed to verify recipient eligibility and to flag potential fraud. If food stamp recipients' data stays in state-specific databases, for instance, individuals may apply for and receive benefits from multiple states. That's why Agricultural Secretary Brooke Rollins requested food stamp beneficiary and transaction data for the past 5 years from all 50 states and Washington, D.C. Data came in from 29 states, nearly all under Republican governance, including my own state of Tennessee. With the data received, the Agriculture Department reports identifying $3 billion in potential fraud and waste, including benefits being sent to 186,000 dead people, to 442,000 applicants with fraudulent Social Security numbers, and to hundreds of thousands of individuals who got duplicate benefits by submitting applications to multiple jurisdictions. But we do not know the full extent of the problems because many states, including some of those with the most food stamps beneficiaries, like California, refuse to comply with Agriculture Department's data request. And that's very disappointing. The fight against fraud should not be a partisan issue. That's why yesterday I sent request letters to the non-compliant states with the highest number of food stamp beneficiaries. My letter demands to know why they refuse to release data about federal taxpayer-funded spending. It also demands their communication and correspondence about the administration's data request. Federal taxpayers deserve to know what Governor Newsom and his counterparts in other states are trying to hide and at what cost. Congress must provide safeguards and oversight on these programs. With that, I yield to my co-chair, Ms. Stansberry, for her opening remarks, otherwise known as ranking member.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to our witnesses for being here today. And it's great to finally have a formal hearing again and be on the record, as this subcommittee has had a long absence from formal hearings. In fact, by our count, it's been 8 months since this committee has been on the record. And so I want to congratulate the chairman on his first official hearing. And I am eager to get into this conversation. And certainly there are lots of bipartisan efforts that can be identified to address waste, fraud, and abuse in federal programmings and to root out improper payments and fraud in federal support programs. And we can prove it. House Democrats and Republicans worked together to pass over 8 oversight bills this month aimed at rooting out financial fraud and improper payments. But we remain skeptical and strongly opposed to efforts to use this as a front to try to further gut public assistance programs. In fact, we have seen over the last year and a half as this administration and this majority has used waste, fraud, and abuse as a front to try to gut basic programs that feed our children. I think that all of us can agree that in one of the wealthiest countries on planet Earth, there should not be hungry children. But over the last year and a half, we have seen one of the most dramatic increases in hunger in the modern time. In fact, recent reports have revealed that the United States is experiencing the highest rates of hunger since before the pandemic. 1 in 5 children right now are currently going without meals. 1 in 5 children in the United States. And because of the big ugly bill that was passed last year on July 4th and signed into law, A report this week in ProPublica revealed that over 770,000 American children are going without meals because of the big ugly bill that Donald Trump pushed through with the support of this majority on the backs of the American people, which we know has also affected 3.5 million Americans' access to food assistance. This is a moral failure. This is not just a policy argument. This is a moral failure in one of the richest countries on planet Earth. What we've seen, not just through the big ugly bill, but through the sustained attacks on the SNAP, WIC, and other food assistance programs that have happened during this Congress and this administration, is that it has chipped away at the ability of families to access these programs. While these supposed work requirements and other paperwork requirements are intended supposedly to address waste, fraud, and abuse, they have instead created barriers that are significant enough to cause millions of families to lose access to basic food. This is a public health crisis. Food is not just essential to life, but access to healthy food is also essential for children's development, for their health, for their ability to thrive. And so while President Trump is taking away food from hungry kids, we've also seen economic policies that have caused the cost of food to skyrocket. The price of food and vegetables has increased by 6% since May of last year. Energy costs have increased by 23% since last year. And when you couple that with cuts...
See, I disagree with her. I actually think that the price of food has gone up because of these government-funded programs. And I'm pretty sure we're going to hear more about this in this hearing, but like the number one thing that's purchased with food stamps or SNAP or whatever is like Coca-Cola or like sugary sodas. And I don't know about you guys, but I've noticed the price of soda go up tremendously in the last few years. And you don't think that like manufacturers like, no, okay, well this is the number one thing purchased. These people aren't using their own like money, they're using SNAP benefits. We know that we're guaranteed to get paid. So we're just gonna, hike the price up because we know they're still gonna buy it. Also, one of the reasons that Trump or the House or whatever is trying to reduce some of the spending is when they audited it, there was a lot of fraud and a lot of fraudulent activity associated with SNAP benefits. I mean, they just said at the beginning of this hearing that there's people that are getting SNAP benefits that are driving like luxury vehicles. There are people out there, and I've seen this firsthand when I used to work in mental health for the state, that know how to work the system, that really don't need those benefits, but they know how to work the system and they know what to do to get those benefits, and they probably shouldn't be getting those benefits. Now, I think that people that truly need these benefits, that are legal American citizens, should absolutely get them. Absolutely. If you're down and out and you need help, and you've been paying into the system for years and you're down on your luck, absolutely. We should help people. We should feed our children 100%. But the reality is there are people that are completely taking advantage of our system, and every time somebody takes advantage of the system, that's less for somebody that's truly in need. And that, in my opinion, is what we need to figure out, what we need to weed out. But for some reason, the left, they just want to throw more money at these problems. And that's not the solution. That's not the solution whatsoever.
In access to health care, cuts in access to food assistance, cuts in access to educational assistance, and the fact that yesterday the President of the United States failed to show up to sign a housing bill that was bipartisan that would have helped millions of families across the United States access housing assistance. We have never seen.
Did you guys know that when President Biden was president, we saw a huge influx of immigrants, and I believe illegal immigrants even, getting FHA loans. So an FHA loan is a loan typically for somebody that doesn't have like a big income, but I forgot exactly what you need to do to qualify for it. But the benefit of an FHA loan is that you're able to purchase a home and put less down. Like, I think people end up putting down, like, I think 3.5% or 5% down on a home when they have an FHA loan. Whereas if you had like a traditional loan, typically you need 20% to put down. So that's like a huge difference, like 3.5% down payment on a home versus 20%. I mean, you really have to save up a lot of money. Like, let's say you're buying a $400,000 home and you need to put 20% down. You need to have $100,000 in hand to buy that home. Whereas if you qualify for an FHA loan, I'm not that good at math offhand. I'd have to do the math, but it's significantly less. You know, I want to say $20K versus $100K. Don't quote me on that number. I'll do the calculations when I'm done speaking. But that's something that we need to talk about. Not that he didn't sign or whatever. Like, nobody talked about that. This is just coming to light over the last few weeks about those FHA loans. And that's something that, as an American citizen, if you're somebody that has been born, raised here, you came here legally, and you work hard in this country, and you haven't been able to afford a home, or you haven't been able to save $100,000 to buy your first home because grocery prices are through the roof, that's something that I would be upset about.
And I believe modern times, an administration that is so anti-family and so anti-working family as we've seen over the last several months. It is hurting our children. It is on the backs of our people. Meanwhile, we're back to this DOGE subcommittee. DOGE has effectively been killed within the administration because of the significant breaking of the law that has happened over the last year and a half of laying off workers, gutting programs, and doing so without congressional consent. Court orders have ordered them to rehire, to rebuild, and yet this administration continues to ignore the law. And here we are, once again, attacking a fundamental program that supports our families. If we were actually serious about rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse, we would be investigating the 21 inspector generals who were fired by this administration. We would be investigating the thousands of investigators in these federal programs who were laid off by DOGE, who are actually the people who look into waste, fraud, and abuse. If we were serious about rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse, we would be investigating the millions of dollars that this administration just wasted on remodeling the reflecting pool, and which is now disintegrating before our eyes.
But guys, why is it disintegrating? Are crazy leftist people going up and putting stuff in it? Is that why it's disintegrating? Is it a waste of money to make sure that Washington, D.C. and the White House, one of the most prestigious places in the world, gets renovated and looks nice? I don't think that that's a waste of money. I don't think it's a waste of money. That's what our tax money is supposed to go for. Like, we were sold, I mean, in a red state, we're told we need to pay taxes because of roads and highways and keeping the streets looking good. Isn't that what our tax money is supposed to go for? It's not supposed to just feed immigrants or whatever. Or it's primarily, I was always raised to believe that our tax money primarily goes to like roads and the military and keeping our streets clean. So I don't know where the disconnect came in, where it went from A to Z so quickly. I don't know. Let's continue.
We would be investigating what is happening with the illegal demolition of the East Wing. We would be investigating the Secretary of Defense, who not only used federal taxpayer dollars to buy lobster and steak dinners, but just asked this body last night for billions of dollars more for an illegal war that both the House and the Senate have already voted on. A war powers resolution is an illegal war. And so while I appreciate that today is about investigating waste, fraud, and abuse, and I appreciate the oversight on states that have records of challenges, I would also note that the 5 states to whom this letter was sent have Democratic governors. It was not sent to any states with Republican governors. So I think we have to ask ourselves, what is this actually about? Is this really about rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse? Or is this about taking food out of the mouths of our children? So I look forward to the conversation, and with that, I yield back.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome our witnesses. First, we have John Walk. Mr. Walk is the Inspector General for the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Next, we have Don Royal, a former 2-term president and current director of the United Council on Welfare Fraud. Next, we have Rachel Gressler. Ms. Gressler is a senior research fellow at the Plymouth Institute for Free Enterprise at Advancing American Freedom. And last, we have Gina Plata. I'm sorry, ma'am. I know I wanted to get it right. That's why I asked him Plata. Burchett. Nobody ever gets it right. Plata Nino. So thank you, ma'am. And you're the director of SNAP Policy and Advocacy at the Food Research and Action Center. And I want to thank you all for joining us, and I look forward to your testimony. Pursuant to Committee Rule 9G, the witnesses will please stand and raise their right hand. Do you solemnly swear to affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Let the record show the witness has answered in the affirmative, and thank you all. Y'all may take your seats. And we appreciate you being here today and look forward to your testimony. Let me remind the witnesses that we have read your written statement, and it will appear in full in the hearing record. Please limit your oral statements to 5 minutes. As a reminder, please press the button on the microphone in front of you so that it is on and the members can hear you. When you begin to speak, the light in front of you will turn green. After 4 minutes, the light will turn yellow. When the red light comes on, your 5 minutes have expired, and we would ask you to please wrap it up. I now recognize Inspector General Walk for his opening statement. Sir, you're recognized.
Chairman Burchett, Ranking Member Stansberry, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for inviting me to testify on Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP fraud. SNAP fraud is a reprehensible crime that squanders the compassion of American taxpayers who fund the program and robs from those low-income Americans who qualify for SNAP benefits to feed themselves and their families. SNAP fraud is not confined to a single individual who engages in deceptive practices to apply for SNAP benefits they are not eligible for. Perpetrators of SNAP fraud include highly organized, tech-savvy, sophisticated criminals that steal enormous sums of money. Proceeds of SNAP fraud have gone to individuals linked to terrorist groups, foreign adversary nations, and transnational criminal organizations. SNAP fraud is not a victimless crime, although its victims are often forgotten. They are the hardworking, tax-paying American farmers, meat packers, and truck drivers who deliver produce from farm to family. All of America's taxpayers give from the fruits of their labor to fund food assistance, showing America's goodness to less fortunate neighbors, and they are the victims of SNAP fraud. The other victims are the vulnerable and low-income Americans who SNAP is intended to benefit. People like the woman one of my special agents told me about, a working mom of 4, a SNAP recipient who discovered that her SNAP benefits were all stolen from her electronic benefits transfer or EBT card while attempting to pay for food at the grocery store. In tears, she asked how she would feed her family for the month until SNAP benefits would next be paid out. Just this week, I spoke to another victim in New York, a working father of 5, whose SNAP EBT card was skimmed and benefits were remotely drained. I've heard many stories from victims like these, working moms and dads, in my 6 months as Inspector General. USDA OIG is working hard every single day on behalf of these victims. They are why SNAP fraud matters. With limited time, I will highlight some of the prevalent forms of SNAP fraud OIG encounters, though there are many others. EBT card skimming is a serious concern. Criminals use skimming technology to capture information such as the EBT card number and PIN code. The data captured is then used to clone the victim's EBT card. Criminals will then cash out at the opportune time. The legitimate recipient is left without food assistance. On this easel here is a picture of a skimmer that can be overlaid to a point-of-sale device in as little as 7 seconds. The criminal now controls the EPT card and owns all the dollars that will be loaded to that card. SNAP trafficking remains an investigatory priority. Today, there are more than 250,000 food retail stores authorized to exchange food for SNAP benefits. They then obtain federal reimbursement for the food they sell. You can think of them as the providers in this program. Unscrupulous retailers will instead use their stores to launder SNAP benefits. An individual will exchange their EPT card for cash, and the retailer will extract the remaining value from the card or sell it. But it's not only cash. Pictured is a store in Southern California involved in an investigation by local and federal law enforcement that OIG supported. SNAP EBT cards were trafficked for cash, exchanged with local gang members at that location for crack cocaine. The gang members then used the proceeds from those SNAP cards to purchase guns, all with tax dollars. I'll just repeat that. SNAP dollars, federal tax dollars, used to buy drugs and guns. And as the district attorney of San Diego shared, just perpetuating the violence already in some of our communities. EBT terminal fraud is also a growing concern. This scheme allows fraudsters to impersonate an authorized retailer and direct SNAP payments to their own bank account. In a recent case, the loss was $66 million. Deterring fraud requires exacting real consequences on those who commit fraud. OIG will continue to investigate, make arrests, and support convictions. Although a strong law enforcement response is critical, we cannot pay and chase our way to stopping SNAP fraud. To be effective, we need to guard the front door by ensuring that proper internal controls at USDA and state administering agencies are in place to prevent fraud. Adopting modern technology to verify identity and other applicant information before making payments is crucial. In addition to the ability to identify and prevent SNAP fraud, we would benefit tremendously from improved information sharing between the federal government and the states. Although USDA maintains data on authorized retailers, individual states maintain data on their own program participants, and access to this information would allow federal oversight to evaluate the effectiveness of internal controls at the applicant level and help fix vulnerabilities. Finally, low-tech security measures associated with SNAP are outmatched by high-tech schemes. Fraud identification, detection, and prevention systems should be updated to meet the tactics and tools of modern fraudsters. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify before this subcommittee on this important topic. I would be pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, General. Ms. Roll, you're recognized, ma'am.
Chairman Burchett, Ranking Member Stansberry, other members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. The United Council on Welfare Fraud is the only national organization of investigators dedicated to protecting public assistance from fraud, waste, and abuse. We are the professionals dedicated to the prevention, investigation, and prosecution of fraud, safeguarding billions of taxpayer dollars to ensure our nation's welfare programs remain strong to assist those in need. I appear before you today as a certified welfare fraud investigator with nearly 2 decades of experience, representing hundreds of investigators who spend their days in the trenches fighting the war against fraud, also advocating to ensure the laws and regulations that are supposed to be supporting these efforts do so. Unfortunately, too many of the safeguards of our nation's SNAP program have been weakened, delayed, or inconsistently implemented. The result is predictable. Benefits have been exploited, and public confidence has eroded. I first had the honor of appearing before this subcommittee nearly a year and a half ago to discuss the broader issues of fraud. We provided our unique perspective from those dealing with these issues and detailed our recommendations to this panel, many of which were later echoed in the committee's own recommendations. So thank you on behalf of UCOF and the beneficiaries we are protecting. My message today, with the focus on SNAP, 15 months after the subcommittee's first hearing, the passage of H.R. 1, and in light of the nationwide fraud discoveries, is more direct. The time for reflection has passed. Action is needed now. SNAP is a vital program, but it's broken. Congress has held hearings, GAO has issued reports, and for its part, UCOF has submitted detailed recommendations to congressional committees, including this one, to the White House Task Force to Eliminate Fraud, and several cabinet agencies. The bottom line, SNAP and the beneficiaries who rely on it need you to act. So what is missing? Where is the disconnect? Action, accountability, and support. Growing up, like you, my family taught me that actions speak louder than words. But even more so, what actions we take on a regular basis form our habits, and that creates our character, illustrating our priorities. When every week brings another screaming headline on another uncovered fraudster, what does this tell us about where we stand on curbing the incidence of SNAP fraud? If we care as a people, we act. If we don't, the results are predictable. I'd like to share a brief anecdote. One of my colleagues recently brought a case to our attention that illustrates several of the ongoing problems in SNAP. One addressed a one-bedroom efficiency, had 27 SNAP and 12 Medicaid beneficiaries. Logic would suggest it's impossible for all of those beneficiaries to live in a one-bedroom apartment. But this is the program we have fostered. These are the types of circumstances that we're dealing with. Or take another case that is a remnant of the COVID era. Long after the end of the public health emergency, there is nothing an investigator, based on current federal policy, can do to prevent a SNAP beneficiary from using their EBT benefits to have eligible items delivered to someone else in another state. So, a recipient with an EBT card issued from Nebraska can order a case of Red Bull on Walmart, Amazon, DoorDash, or Uber Eats and have it delivered to or picked up by someone in Kentucky.
Okay, guys, don't you see an issue with this? This is an issue. That's supposed to be used for your family. You're saying, you know, you can't afford groceries. You need essential groceries. That's the argument. You know, people need to eat. It's the right to have food. But you can use your EBT card or SNAP card, go on to Walmart.com and send it to your buddy, send him a case of Monster drinks or Red Bulls in another state. And you think that is good use of those benefits? I don't think so.
This was permitted during the pandemic, but it's one of the few COVID-era policies that has not been rescinded, and it's fraud. Benefits delivery should be restricted to the beneficiary's address of record. It's one of the few safeguards the program has, and convenience of this sort only encourages fraudulent behavior. My written testimony that builds on UCOF's comments last year, and I promise I won't go point by point, but rather refer it to you as it represents a perspective of those fighting the daily battles for all of us. Further, it also serves as a blueprint for the work that still needs to be accomplished, not only to protect the millions of SNAP beneficiaries, but also the taxpayers underwriting the program. We urge Congress to legislate where authority is needed and protect funds for program integrity. We urge USDA to fully implement the laws and uniformly enforce its regulations. Similarly, CMS must resolve the uncertainty fragmenting SNAP and Medicaid cases due to its inaction. To enforce all of this, the subcommittee, in coordination with authorizers and appropriators, should require written plans with named officials, measurable milestones, public reporting, and consequences for missed deadlines. Program integrity and compassion are not competing values. Strong oversight of SNAP program protects taxpayers and recipients. Both parties have a stake in the continuing viability of this program. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The dedicated professionals at UCOF are committed to helping you and your colleagues preserve SNAP and the rest of our country's social welfare programs. And I welcome questions from you and your colleagues.
Thank you, Ms. Roll. Ms. Gressler, you are recognized for 5 minutes, ma'am.
Chairman Burchett, Ranking Member Stansbury, and members of the committee, good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today. My name is Rachel Gressler, and I am a Senior Research Fellow at Advancing American Freedom. The American people must report every dollar they earn to the federal government, and they face penalties, audits, and potential prosecution if they don't pay the right amount. Yet, there's remarkably little accountability for the $4.2 trillion taxpayer dollars that Washington redistributes across about 100 federal benefit programs. This lack of transparency and accountability is the central problem underlying waste, fraud, and abuse. $184 billion. That's the amount that the federal government reported last year in improper payments. And it's equivalent to about 8 weeks of gas and groceries for every household in America. That figure doesn't even include programs that aren't measured or fraud that goes undetected. The GAO reported that taxpayers lose up to $521 billion per year. At the upper end, that's almost 2 months of housing payments for every household in America. It's understandable that many hardworking Americans are frustrated when they struggle to afford ordinary expenses, even as the government fails to safeguard their taxes. Today, we're talking about the SNAP program, which has exploded over the past 15 years. This growth can't be explained solely based on need. The poverty rate has declined since 2008, and yet the percentage of people on SNAP benefits has increased over 50%. With the explosion in spending has come a 5-fold increase in improper payments, a 10.9% improper payment rate last year, equal to $10.2 billion. The incentive problem is obvious. The states decide what to spend, and the federal taxpayer foots the bill. It doesn't matter whether a state has a 3% improper payment rate like South Dakota or 25% like Alaska. The federal government pays it all. H.R. 1 included a huge win for SNAP accountability by requiring states to share in the costs if their improper payments exceed 6%. This is a crucial step towards protecting taxpayer dollars, and it should be extended to other federal programs. It's important to note that much of the outright fraud that occurs, such as that's been discussed by Inspector Walk and Ms. Royal, often isn't counted in the improper payments because it happens after the benefits are delivered. Legal abuse of programs, such as millionaires qualifying for benefits because of eligibility loopholes, also isn't included in improper payments. The Trump administration and this Congress have taken unprecedented steps towards reducing waste, fraud, and abuse. And many of those actions are in line with my 4 proposals to establish radical transparency and meaningful accountability for taxpayers' dollars. First, follow the money. The federal government should account for the money it spends as carefully as it accounts for the dollars it collects. We can't reduce fraud if we can't follow the money. Second, close eligibility loopholes. Congress should end legal abuse of federal welfare programs by eliminating broad-based categorical eligibility, which allows individuals to automatically qualify for benefits based on something as trivial as receiving a brochure. The Department of Agriculture estimated that this loophole allowed 5.6 million individuals who were not eligible under federal standards to nonetheless receive SNAP benefits. The No Welfare for the Wealthy Act of 2025 would reduce this abuse by requiring households to meet federal standards for SNAP benefits. Third, measure improper payments accurately and consistently. Many programs aren't measured at all, others are measured inconsistently, and some recent administrations have intentionally undercounted improper payments. Congress should require all distributors of federal benefits to comply with federal measurement standards and data requests. Failure to do so should trigger cost sharing or disqualification from distributing benefits. And fourth is to expand skin in the game accountability. Without consequences, laws aimed at protecting taxpayers' dollars will fail. Policymakers should expand H.R. 1's SNAP provisions by imposing fix-it or fund-it-yourself requirements across all federal programs. Congress's constitutional authority over the purse does not end when taxpayer dollars leave the Treasury. Every federal dollar that is spent should be subject to the same scrutiny, accountability that is required of taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Plata Nino is recognized.
Good morning, Chairman, Ranking Member, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I am an attorney in good standing, and I have represented clients who needed help accessing SNAP because the process was too burdensome. I have seen firsthand the daily struggles families face when food assistance is delayed, denied, or difficult to obtain. I have also had the opportunity to serve the federal government and saw the hard work state agencies do to help programs operate more efficiently and effectively. I want to begin with a simple point. Program integrity and food access are not competing goals. Congress can protect taxpayers' dollars and protect families from hunger at the same time. But to do that, we must be precise about the problem we are trying to solve. SNAP is not an abstract line item. It is grocery money that allows a grandmother to buy food after paying for prescriptions. It is a support that helps a parent stretch a low paycheck through the end of the month. It is the difference between a child arriving at school ready to learn and a child trying to focus on an empty stomach. In 2020,
I just want to say this because the Dems always do this. They always want to make everything emotional. Multiple things can be true at once. But us just ignoring the fraud, abuse, and waste, that's not helpful. Throwing more money at a program that we know has a lot of errors and is being used fraudulently doesn't help anybody. It actually harms American citizens that need those benefits. So I think a lot of us in this chat would agree if somebody really needs help, they should receive help. I don't think well, maybe that's not true. Maybe some people feel like, no, you're on your own. But personally, I feel if you need help, that's what it's there for. You should be able to get those benefits. And actually, it's not so easy to get those benefits. The government websites are not easy to follow. A lot of people need assistance, especially if they are disabled or elderly. They need help filling out those forms. It could be a very long, tedious process for some people. So it should be simplified. But the problem is it's not, it's complex. And because it's kind of, pardon my line of this isn't politically correct, like it's kind of retarded, so it invites schemes and frauds because it doesn't function properly. But again, one thing has nothing to do with the other. I don't think anybody here is saying, no, we're going to cut off all SNAP benefits. That's not the point of this hearing. The point of this hearing is we have this great program called SNAP. It's really beneficial for people that actually need it. We want to continue with it, but how can we make it better so we're not wasting taxpayer money and people aren't abusing it? That's the point of this. So I don't understand why we need to have a whole sob story and make it something that it's not.
over 47 million people in the United States live food insecure households, including over 14 million children. Those numbers represent American families making impossible choices every day. SNAP responds to that need. It served over 41 million people in fiscal year 24, and most SNAP households include a child, an older adult, a person with a disability. Many participants work in jobs that pay too little or offer too few stable hours. Others turn to SNAP during a layoff, a health crisis, a caregiving emergency, or a temporary loss of income. SNAP helps people weather hardship and it helps them move forward. That is why accuracy matters. Every dollar should reach the people who qualify for help, but we must not confuse payment errors with fraud. Fraud involves intentional wrongdoing. Payment errors often involve complicated rules, changing work hours, missing paperwork, outdated systems, or agency mistakes. Treating every hour as fraud misdiagnoses the problem. It also drives policies that can punish eligible families instead of fixing the administrative systems that need support. SNAP already has one of the most rigorous integrity systems in the federal government. Applicants complete detailed applications, participate in interviews, submit documentation, and have their information checked against federal and state databases. States conduct ongoing reviews, and the SNAP quality control system re-examines tens of thousands of cases each year. When states identify errors, they must correct them, and where required, submit corrective action plans. The greatest fraud threat facing SNAP households, as my colleague said, today is organized benefit theft. Criminals skim, clone, and phish EBT cards, then drain benefits from households that have already proven their eligibility, costing billions of dollars in taxpayers' money. Behind every claim is a household that expected to buy groceries and instead found an empty account. Congress should focus on the vulnerabilities that actually harm families and taxpayers. That means accelerating chip-enabled EBT cards. Congress should also protect the administrative capacity that makes integrity possible. States reduce errors when they can hire trained eligibility workers, modernize outdated systems, answer phones, process documents on time, and conduct meaningful quality reviews. Cutting administrative support, as H.R. 1 has done, by shifting an additional 25% to states while demanding greater accuracy, runs counter to the goal of accountability. Finally, Congress should evaluate SNAP performance with a full set of measures: payment accuracy, benefit theft, timeliness, access, churn, customer service, and participation among eligible households. A state can lower an error rate by making the program harder to access, but that does not mean it has improved integrity. It may simply mean eligible people gave up, missed an interview, could not reach a call center, or lost food assistance because of paperwork. The right standard is clear. SNAP should be accurate, secure, timely, and accessible. Families should not have to prove their hunger repeatedly through unnecessary barriers. States should not have to choose between service delivery and fiscal survivors. Taxpayers should not expect oversight that targets real risk, not policies that shift costs onto families with the least ability to bear them. SNAP works when it reaches eligible people and protects public resources. We can strengthen both. I urge you to invest in secure payment technology, restore and preserve strong federal-state administrative support, measure what truly matters, and keep the human impact at the center of every integrity discussion that has caused over 4 million individuals losing SNAP benefits since the passage of H.R. 1. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, ma'am. And I will commend all y'all. You got it done in 5 minutes, which is kind of incredible. So y'all get your rewards in heaven, all right? Because this is a subcommittee. We don't even have food back here. Anyway, thank y'all. And I now recognize myself for 5 minutes of questions. This is for all y'all. According to nonpartisan anti-fraud experts, improved data sharing is needed to better identify and prevent fraud in federal benefit programs, especially those administered by the states. But 21 states have for the past year refused to provide food stamp data with the Department of Agriculture. The Agriculture Department identified $3 billion in potential fraud just from the food stamp data submitted by 29 states. That includes benefits going to 186,000 deceased individuals and to 442,000.
So let me ask you guys this. Why do you think, and I really don't know the answer to this, like why do you think a state wouldn't want to hand over this information? Because it's affecting them. That's taking money that they could have appropriated other ways. Like, why wouldn't a state be willing to share this data? Do we think it's because they have corrupt workers that are milking the system, skimming from the top? Are they getting kickbacks to fund certain groups? I don't know. I really don't know the answer. I don't understand why they wouldn't want to share that information. I think that that's actually one of the biggest issues we have in our government, that we don't have proper sharing and communication between various departments. And I think that's why a lot of this fraud ends up sliding through, because you don't have the correct oversight and the correct, I want to say like a complement, I don't mean complement, like a complementary system where things match up. I think that we could avoid a lot of the fraud and abuse, because I think some of it could actually just be like accidental too. I don't think all of it is necessarily nefarious, but a lot could be minimized if we had better communication between these different government entities and the states and the federal government, in my opinion.
Beneficiaries with fake Social Security numbers. Based on these results, is it fair to assume the Trump administration could identify additional fraud if it had the data from 21 non-compliant states? Ms. Platonino? Thank you, ma'am.
Platonino.
Say it one more time for me.
Platonino.
They've told me this back here, and I'm just terrible. I apologize.
That's okay.
I'm going to get it.
That's all right. Thank you for the question. The Privacy Act of '74 and the paperwork reduction of 80 creates a balance between Congress and the executive branch to make sure that we protect the privacy of Americans. The data that USDA handles and the states handles has a high rigorous quality control measures that are important to protect the safety of American families. The data request that is being asked goes above and beyond that. It asks for 5 years of Americans' families' data, including HIPAA-protected information, whether or not they were eligible, whether or not they apply. So think about the 15-year-old child and single mother who applied during the pandemic, and right after they found a job, now that 15-year-old child with many medical needs, that information will go over to an entity that we don't know what sort of protections and privacy will go forward. The Quality Control Program, as USDA has stated, has rigorous control measures, and the data that is currently being sent by those states is randomized and anonymized to protect privacy of American individuals.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Gressler?
Yes, it is absolutely fair to assume that you could catch significantly more fraud if you take 50 different siloed databases and compile them together. And just one example of that is that the same Social Security number could be used to claim food stamps in 50 states plus the District of Columbia. And none of those states will know that because they don't have access to the other one.
There's no cohesive force between the two. There's no, as we found with the IRS and a lot of our agencies, the computers just don't hook up. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, they're not looking across them, and essentially the federal government is granting a blank check to the states to apply these programs, and yet they're not returning the data per the recent request to be able to ensure the integrity of those dollars.
Right, thank you. Ms. Royal?
Ms. Gressler did an excellent job of answering that question. Of course, more data is going to be able for us to identify more fraud. The trouble right now, states don't have access to information if a recipient or applicant is already receiving benefits in another state. There is a question on the application that requires the applicant to provide that information. You know, have you received benefits in another state? If so, which one? If they mark no to that, then as an investigator, there's no way for me to contact another state to verify that. So having access to the data, making sure that benefits aren't already being issued by another state and preventing dual issuance would be a significant savings to the taxpayer.
Inspector General?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can just give a couple of examples. So with OIG, and I'll just speak from OIG's perspective. I know that USDA is doing a separate data request, but about a year ago under my predecessor, OIG requested data from the top 10 SNAP states in terms of spending in order to review integrity and quality of state data. We've released one report very recently from Ohio and found $13.3 million in anomalies that would not have otherwise been found because we were able to work with the state. The state, before that report even became public, started working on those anomalies to be able to figure out what was actually going on. Puerto Rico, although not one of the state agencies that we were looking at, their Comptroller General looked at their own data and came up with found $150 million of NAP benefits that went to dead people. 38,000 dead people that received that nutrition dollars. And almost immediately, we went down to Puerto Rico and met with the Comptroller General and with their IG to talk through how we can help from a federal perspective to exercise federal oversight. Because the states have this participant data, if we don't have it, we can't even find the vulnerabilities, much less start to collaborate about how we can go about changing it. And today, we have 6 of those 10 states that have provided the data. 4 have continued to object after a year. And I recently ordered subpoenas for that data, and we're still waiting on it.
Okay, thank you. I've run over a little bit. As chairman, I'm allowed to do that apparently, but I hate it when they do that. So I'm going to recognize my ranking. No, you want me to go to the Democrat? Okay. Yep, go ahead, brother. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Walk, were you involved in the development of Project 2025? You have any involvement in it?
I was.
Yes, sir. It's a yes or no.
Yes, I was a volunteer.
Limited involvement, maybe?
I was a volunteer,
okay.
Sir.
Before you were nominated as IG, you were a political appointee, USDA.
I was actually the judicial officer at USDA since December 2020. 2020.
Were you a political appointee at any point in your career in the Trump administration?
Sure, I was a political appointee after nearly 10 years as a career employee at
Before your nomination as IG, did you have any experience specifically in auditing? Did you ever serve as an auditor?
When I was at the Homeland Security Department, one of my first assignments as an attorney was to provide advice.
You provided legal advice to auditors.
About our Inspector General audits.
You never conducted any audits?
No.
Did you ever work in an IG's office as a deputy staff member, ever work in any IG office at any level before your nomination?
No, I did not work at an IG's office.
Okay. During your tenure as IG at USDA, have you recused yourself from any matters involving decisions you made during your tenure previously as an advisor to the agency?
I'm not.
You haven't found the need to, or you've made a decision that you're not going to recuse, you don't think you need to recuse if you were involved in anything, or you just...
Sure. I've spoken with counsel and as well as the career ethics official at USDA, and there have been no issues raised that has required my recusal based on their counsel.
Interesting. Okay. Your predecessor, IG Fong, had 22 years of experience. Before she became IG, she had IG experience before that. Bipartisan credibility, Mr. Chairman, you can go back and watch the videos in this committee. I stood in this room and watched Democrats and Republicans praise her work. She was fired by President Trump because he doesn't want independent IGs with experience.
Let's be real, guys. Our government and our economy was not doing well under Biden. Like, things went downhill pretty quickly. I'm not even going to get into politics or whatever, but let's just call a spade a spade. Everyone has noticed since 2021 to now that prices have gone up egregiously. If you go back and look at your bank account and what you spent on groceries back in 2020, it is significantly less than what you spend today in 2026. And that's not the only thing that's gone up in pricing. Home prices and rent, I think has really skyrocketed in the last 5 years. Energy, electricity pricing has gone up. I mean, everything has gone up for Americans. It's very expensive to live, a comfortable lifestyle in America. So I don't blame our current president for wanting to come in and just have a redo. Most administrations do that. They go in and they make changes, cabinet changes to the DOJ. I mean, this is a very common practice. And when Biden came in, he did that. So I don't know why they just continuously go after Trump about this, because every other Democratic and Republican president before him has done the same thing. This is a non-issue. And to try to discredit this person instead of talking about the true issue that we have a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse when it comes to SNAP is kind of ridiculous. But this is a common thing that the left likes to do.
He wants you. No IG experience, no audit experience, a political actor and a political appointee. SNAP fraud is a real issue.
Oh, because this guy's not a political actor?
And that's why we need qualified, independent, nonpartisan, non-political IGs. The Trump administration has systematically fired them. But let's talk about some waste, fraud, and abuse. I went down to the reflecting pool yesterday, check out the president's new project. This guy here, and I don't like to judge a book by its cover. Appearances can be deceiving. But sometimes if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck and dresses like a duck, it is a crook. This is John Carafo. He's a crook. He pled guilty to bribery and campaign finance violations, longtime Republican donor. Got a $1.7 million no-bid contract to filter the water at the reflecting pool. I went down to check it out yesterday. Somewhat ironically, I didn't believe this when I was told it. His company's name is Green Water Services. President promised us beautiful blue water. Gave a contract to this crook who gave us green water, algae, and dying ducks. Mr. Chairman, at some point, this committee will have to address the waste, fraud, the abuse that's taking place in this administration. The wolves are in the House. They're in the White House. The waste, the fraud, and abuse is happening under our own eyes. And this DOJ committee, committed to government efficiency, hears no evil and sees no evil. Because this is the president's buddy from Mar-a-Lago.
Why is he lying?
Said he's a great guy.
People are literally going to that fountain and putting
The
crap
president
in it, and
and
that's
this
why it
Congress,
constantly
this
needs
Republican
maintenance.
Congress, have literally taken food from the mouths of hungry children,
So ridiculous.
and they're putting it in the pockets of crooks like this.
One allocation has nothing
that's not
to do
fraudulent,
with the other. But if he's
Mr.
so
Chairman,
concerned, he should make a concerted
I don't know
effort
what
to
is.
tell his
I yield back.
leftist buddies to stop throwing stuff
Thank
in
you.
the ponds, and
Now
then they
yield
wouldn't
to
need that guy
5
in the
minutes to
first
Mr.
place.
Cloud.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I
Anyways, guys, it's close to midnight here, and it's a Monday night, so I am gonna call it a night. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll definitely be here tomorrow. I want to continue this this hearing. Like I said in the chat, this is a good one. So thanks again for spending your Monday night with me, and I will see you back here tomorrow.